After Kassim, I figure I have permission to be funny. Folks, this is very big for me. It's a big honor. It's a big deal. The first time I attended one of the salutes to Israel, it was at Pastor Hagee's church in San Antonio, and I'm not big in petitionary prayer. It's my problem. Don't read anything into it. It's my theology and my problem. I ask God what He wants from me much more than I ask God what I want from Him. It's just how I work. My theology. But I did make a petitionary prayer that I please allow me to get through my speech without crying. I give you my word, I actually made that prayer because it was so difficult. Jews are not used to being liked. You just have to understand that. It's like the man who called my show, one of my 10 favorite calls after I spoke about my lack of serious problems with the name Washington Redskins. So he said, well, Dennis, what would you think if a team were named the Jews? And I said, well, I'll tell you the truth. We've been looking for fans for 3,200 years. So, when a Jew attends one of these, it's a little surreal. There are people who like us, love us. So I just want you to know that. It's a very powerful thing for a Jew to experience this. Truth is, I wish every Jew in Denver were here right now. It would be a transformative experience for those Jews, and I don't know if they want to be transformed. So I will address that actually later. There is something I need to say, though, about the man who made this all possible, George Morrison, your pastor. I know Christians are very worried about the sin of pride. Jews don't worry about that quite as much. We share a lot, but we're some differences as well. So I will risk having him sin by telling you, it is not often I use this term, he is a great man. It's very important. It's easy to know greatness when it's gone, but the trick is to appreciate it and value it while we have it. So that is why it is so important for someone to know it now, not 50 years from now, when he's given a eulogy. He is great. His wife is great. This church is great.
Amen.
God bless you all. This is amazing. So the story is that God says that I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Well, it turns out that even if you don't believe in God and don't believe in the Bible, if you are a complete atheist, it happens to be true. No, this is very important that believers understand this. We can't believe things that aren't true. That is a very fundamental belief as a religious person. Belief must be true, and it must be true not only because you believe it, but because it is demonstrably true. I believe I can demonstrate to a person who is open-minded that the odds are overwhelming that there is a creator, that there is a designer. There is just too much evidence that there is a God. It is not just I believe in God and that's the end of the story. So too, God does forget God. Those who bless the Jews end up blessed, and those who curse the Jews end up cursed. That's not belief, that's fact. Just go through history, and those who curse the Jews, they are now anecdotes in history, correct? Okay, it's very important to understand that. There isn't an exception to this rule. And look at the world today. What is the country that has most blessed the Jews in the world in the last, since Israel indeed exists, and indeed even before that? The United States of America. I am certain, I don't believe, I am certain that they are linked. This is the country that put a verse from the Torah on the Liberty Bell. There's no verse from the Torah on the Eiffel Tower. This is the country that had two of its founders, Franklin and Jefferson, design a seal for the United States which depicted the Jews leaving Egypt. Then that's Franklin and Jefferson, who are called deists, which is untrue. But they're called deists, and that's what they designed. This was the first Judeo-based country. This is a Judeo-Christian country, the United States of America. So that blessedness coincides with its blessings for the Jews and Israel. Now look at the other end. Where is Israel most cursed? Israel is most cursed today in parts of the Islamic world and the Arab world. Well, they also happen to be the most benighted places on the planet. You don't have to believe in God to be able to say that right now the Arab world is in terrible shape. Terrible moral shape, economic shape, rights shape, blood shape, life shape, all of it. It's cursed. And let me tell you, I believe, again, I am certain that if the Arab world were to decide, you know what, there is a place for the Jewish state in our part of the world, because indeed there would be no Islam had there not been a Judaism. There is a place for Israel as a Jewish state. Its fortunes would change immediately. I am convinced of it. It breeds the Arab and much of the Muslim world today. Its oxygen is Jew hatred. Its oxygen is America hatred. When you breathe that, you're not healthy. When you breathe decency, you are healthy. But here's the final part of this. Should the United States turn away from Israel, it will no longer be blessed. And I, as one who loves America so deeply, as Cheryl said, to my toenails, I fear for America because it is, in fact, beginning to abandon Israel. I worry this country is in decay. I think most of you sadly agree with me. I am not happy to say it. I believe that it is not coincidental that its alienation from Israel and its decay are taking place at the exact same time. Did you know that when Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, spoke at the United Nations 2 weeks ago, the United States ambassador to the United Nations was told not to attend? I'll bet you didn't know that, which proves not all of you listen to my show. It's very humbling. It's a humbling moment for me. Isn't that incredible? Is she there for Putin's talk? Is she there for the Iranian leaders who come? She's not there for the Prime Minister of Israel, let alone the Secretary of State not there? Some assistant ambassador was there. You know what a statement that is to Israel's enemies? Israel can't rely on us quite as much as it could in the past. That's the message. All of these things are messages. I worry about America in its abandonment of Israel. Now, it's not fully abandoned. I don't want to say that. I don't want to be misquoted. It is not. I worry if it happens. That is my point. And it is related to the health of America. You know, the place that is most anti-Israel in the United States is the university. Is the university a morally healthy, intellectually healthy place?
No.
Okay. They are related. Now, here are some sobering thoughts. Just remember, if God is to be taken seriously, blessing those who bless Israel and cursing those who curse Israel, the country and the people, the Jewish people, then it not only applies to countries, it also applies to religions. Look at Christendom. Look at what is happening to the mainstream Protestant churches that have abandoned Israel and joined the BDS movement. Almost nobody goes on Sunday. They're disappearing. Look at the churches of Europe, who didn't do well by their Jews, did they? They're now museums. The thriving Christendom is the Christendom in America that is pro-Israel. This is the thriving Christians of the United States of America. It is worth noting in this context, Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations, our Christian community, that is in Israel, continues to grow and thrive from year to year as Christian communities are decimated elsewhere in the Middle East. Now, isn't it interesting that the Christians who most care about Israel are also the Christians who most care about Christians? Do you know the silence in the world over the decimation and annihilation of the world's oldest Christian communities is mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. It is mind-boggling. Mainstream Protestant churches are more interested in boycotting, divesting from Israel than they are in helping save the Christians of the Middle East. Israel bothers them more than the death of Christendom. It's unbelievable. It's sick. It's truly sick. Mm-hmm. This is what is happening among so many mainstream churches. And of course, when it comes to passion, the passion is without question. If you put the decimation of Christian communities versus carbon emissions, Protestant churches in general, are out there far more preoccupied with carbon emissions than the death of Christians. Mm-hmm. It is unbelievable. Christians are taken to a seashore and their throats are cut like a goat, like a sheep, because they're Christian, and nothing is said. And the passion is still about carbon emissions and climate change. At worst, what will happen in 40 years. But right now, these people's throats were cut for being Christians. Girls are being sent for being Yazidis. They are sent into an unbelievable horror nightmare of sexual slavery, from group to group, sold for money. And the world is preoccupied with carbon emissions. I scratch myself off. I feel like I live on a different moral planet than the United Nations. Mm. And then so much of the United States and Europe and the rest of the world. This is what I believe. Not only is America's fate involved in Israel's fate, so is Christendom's fate involved in Christianity, in Israel's fate. It's a very interesting thing. You know this. I don't think the Jews here know this. Of course they're doing it, and we are grateful that you're doing it for us. But you're doing it for you just as much for us. Christianity will rise or fall as it regards its tree from which it comes. That is a fact. The Jews are the chosen people. There's only one group I can still say this to, well, there are two groups actually, I can still say this to, who don't find it very uncomfortable. Christians such as yourself and Orthodox Jews. Any place else, you tell a secular Jew that Jews are the chosen people, and he refers you to a therapist that he knows. It's a fascinating thing. If Jews are not comfortable with chosenness, by the way, I totally understand that. It's not like we have benefited from it. Oh, look at that, we're chosen. What a great history we've had. People love us for it. What is it? Is it Jeremiah who says, I knew you, therefore I will visit upon you all of the iniquities and all of the punishments you will suffer. Being God's chosen people is not a big help to one's health. But it's true because there's no other way to explain Jewish history. How do you explain the fact that the United Nations passed 20 resolutions last year against Israel and one about the Syrian slaughter of 250,000 people? How do you explain that? Did you see the ad? God bless the American Jewish Committee put out a full-page ad in the New York Times. It showed the United Nations, and it had every nation on one side and Israel on the other. A full-page ad. It's sad. I looked to see that they at least put the U.S. on the same side as Israel, and it didn't. This is a first. That was a very sad ad. I looked to see where they placed the United States. I didn't know what they would do. How do you explain the preoccupation with Jews in Israel? How do you explain it? There is only one explanation. We're chosen. There is no rational, non-God-centered, non-divine explanation for why evil is preoccupied with Jews. I've often pointed out about this chosenness. Chosenness is a big factor. Anti-Semites hate the fact that Jews call themselves chosen. Hate it. So I've often thought, do you know, folks, that every nation has some belief in chosenness? You know why there is a sun on the Japanese flag? Because the Japanese believe they get the sun before the rest of humanity. How many of you hate the Japanese for that belief? Nobody. Your view is, if you didn't feel that way, no problem, and thank you for sushi. that is how you think. That is life. No issue. You think you get the sun first? You get the sun first. And I'm not mocking it at all. But it doesn't, nobody hates Japanese for it. The Chinese, the word China in Chinese means middle kingdom, middle of the world. Everyone else, all non-Chinese are different. China is the center of the world. Any of you hate Chinese because of it? Of course not. Then come the Jews, one of the smallest peoples in the world, and you would think that any Jew who said, we're chosen, God chose us, most people would think they're nuts. But no, they don't. We're hated for it. There's only one possible explanation. It might be true. Right. Yeah. That's why I'm making it. I don't know any other way to explain Jewish history. I do not. Nor do you, nor does a secularist. I have asked secularists, whether Jew or not Jew, explain the preoccupation of evil with Jews. Explain Hitler. For the Nazis, killing Jews was more important than winning World War II. This is now universally acknowledged among historians. Lucy Davidowitz was the first to point that out in the war against the Jews, and now it is essentially universally acknowledged. Why? Why? Why is it so important for Iran to exterminate one country? Why? Why was it willing to risk sanctions just because of that? Because we're chosen.
because evil really hates us. And it doesn't speak well about the universities of the Western world that Israel is the most hated country on the universities of the Western world. It speaks terribly about the value collapse, the moral values collapse at our universities. I warn parents, sending your child right after high school to college is like playing Russian roulette with their values. Yeah. Just know that. Just know that. Netanyahu said at the UN, I quote, "Israel is mankind's front line in the battle against barbarism." A state the size of New Jersey is mankind's front line? A state smaller than El Salvador is mankind's front line? Yes, it is. That is correct. I often have a debate with myself, what's my favorite verse in the Bible? Because there are a lot of great ones. But I will say that in the last few years, this one from the Psalms has resonated with me because it's the most necessary right now. The Jews here will recognize it if I say it in Hebrew. I, of course, will translate Oavei Hashem Sinura. Those of you who love God, you must hate evil. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. That is lost today. We are love bombed. All the talk is about love. There is no legitimate love without hatred of evil. Period. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. And if you really love God, you hate evil. I'll never forget when Berkeley voted that it was a hate-free zone. Yes, it did. It's about 20 years ago. It voted that the city of Berkeley is a hate-free zone. And I announced on the radio, I can't visit it. I hate evil. I hate murder. I hate rape. I hate torture. I hate totalitarianism. I got a whole list of things I hate. But at Berkeley, I guess they don't hate it. Do you know that Ami Horowitz, who makes these videos that you sometimes see on Fox, but they're very popular on YouTube? Ami Horowitz stood at the Berkeley, and he waved the ISIS flag, the flag of people who rape with pride, who slaughter with pride, who torture with pride, who burn people alive, who bury people alive, who drown people with video cameras to see their agony. He stood there waving it for 2 hours. It's on video. 1 or 2 people in 2 hours said something negative. Some said something positive, and most said nothing. Then he waved the Israeli flag at the campus, and he was so reviled, and so much cursing was directed at him, he had to leave. That's sick. That's morally sick. That is what it has come to. So there is a big battle, and if you love God, you have to hate evil. And if you love God, then yes, part of God's plan is that the Jews are at the center of history. By the way, we didn't ask for it. The rabbis here, and I thank every rabbi from the bottom of my heart for being here. I'll have something to say about that in a moment. But the rabbis probably know this one. It's a midrash. Midrash are legends that the rabbis 2,000 years ago wrote 1,500 years ago to offer an idea in the form of a story. So they said that God held Mount Sinai over the heads of the Jews and threatened to drop it on them if they didn't take the 10 Commandments. Now, I mean, when I heard that in yeshiva, Jewish religious school that I attended till I was 18, I thought, that makes sense. 10 Commandments, an invisible God giving me all these laws, and an orgy? No take the orgy. So that's what took place at Sinai, right? That's why Moses smashed the tablets his first time down. It was a very, very deep understanding that this is going to be a hard road to take God's law into the world, to take God into the world. So let me direct my final comments to my fellow Jews. 3 points that I would like to make. 1, the word should finally get out to all our fellow Jews that America's Christians are not European Christians. I am rather disgusted when I hear Jews tell me not to trust America's Christians because of the Crusades and the Inquisition. So here's just a little historical reminder. American Jews had very little to do with the Crusades and the Inquisition. This comes as a revelation to some American Jews, and therefore the word should be spread. Don't blame America's Jews for what happened in Germany or France or anywhere else in Europe. Okay? That's pretty important if you care about intellectual honesty. All right? Number 1. Point number 2. Most Jews in America should be in a state of deep cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the problem that arises when you believe X, but reality is the opposite of X. It's like, I'll give you a simple example. You just bought a certain car, and then you read in the paper review after review telling you the flaws of your car. You go into cognitive dissonance because you don't want to believe it because you just bought this car. So you don't want to believe all these bad reviews are accurate. The cognitive dissonance that American Jews should be in is this. The institutions that they most trust turn out to be the Jews' biggest enemy, and those that the Jews least trusted, the people the Jews least trusted, turn out to be the Jews' best friends. This can drive a Jew dreaming. Right? What do Jews most trust? Education, learning, the university. You know my story. I know some of you have heard this. People come over to me quite frequently, in fact, pretty much every day, and will say, "Oh, Dennis Prager, wonderful, love your show, whatever, whatever." And I'm always touched. I never consider that to be a nuisance. I'm very honored. Now, I never know if the person's religion unless they state it, and they don't usually. But there is one giveaway. If the person continues to talk to me and tells me what college their kid attended, it's a Jew. Just know that. This is a tip-off. You don't know this, but let me tell you, you should know. If you meet a stranger who tells you what college their kid goes to, it's a Jew. It's very simple. In the history of the world, no Gentile has told a stranger what college his kid goes to. It's not the first thing on their mind. It's the first thing on Jews' mind, because if your kid went to Yale, you have prestige. If your kid went to Montana State, you have less prestige. If your kid didn't go to college, you don't talk about it. Talk about the Dodgers, well, you don't talk about the Rockies as much, but by the way, I just have to say, and then I'll get back to this, I have to say, this is really appropriate. You know that I am a Rockies fan. No. I'm sure you don't believe me. You will now. You think I go around the country and I tell people they're the fan of their team? The lie would catch up with me, right? Your manager, Walt Weiss, is a living angel. I love that man. He is a regular listener to my show. We have a serious friendship, and I just want you to know, I know the Rockies are not doing well. I'm well aware. It pains me, I know that, because I love the guy. But I thought you would like to know something you would otherwise never know. He's a very special person. Anyway, Jews trust the university. And the university is the most anti-Israel institution in the United States and the world. I debated at Oxford last year. Last November, I debated at Oxford. Most prestigious debating forum in the world, the Oxford Forum. And you know what the subject was? Is Israel or Hamas the greater obstacle to peace? It's bad enough that was the subject. Guess what? My partner and I lost. We who said Hamas was the greater obstacle. And I said to them at Oxford, I said, this is the first time in history, if you vote for this resolution, that you will be voting that a free society is the aggressor, but in a war between a free society and a dictatorship. Never in the history of the modern world, or all of history, has the free society been the villain and the totalitarian state has been the victim. Except Israel, it's all inverted. The university morally is a wasteland. That includes Colorado University, just in case you thought I wanted to butter you up. Colorado University is a moral wasteland, as is UCLA, as is Oxford. You don't know how bad it is. You don't know. There are some wonderful teachers. I know that. Of course, I'm generalizing. Without generalizations, one has no grasp on reality, however. That is the reality. So Jews venerate the universities. Turns out to be that's the most anti-Israel place in the Western world. And the group they least trust, Christians, turn out to be their best friends. As I said, it could induce a Jew to start drinking. But that's the dissonance that every thinking Jew should be in right now. Wow, Christians are our best friends and the universities are our biggest enemies? Not what I expected, is it? But that's the case. And point number 3 to my fellow Jews. The former head of the Union for Reform Judaism wrote an article, and he asked as president of the Reformed Congregations of America, he asked his rabbis and the congregants not to attend Christians United for Israel and other such evenings put on by conservative Christian groups such as this church. We don't agree with them, we Reformed Jews don't agree with them on too many social issues. Therefore, we cannot, just because they're pro-Israel, go to their events. Incidentally, are there any Reform rabbis here? If so, I would like to